Good afternoon. This is Terrence O'Hanlon, publisher at Reliability Web and Uptime Magazine. I'm your host and moderator for today's Reliability Roadmap Web Workshop. If you are looking for the web workshop called Applying PAS-55 Principles, Water Wastewater Case Study, delivered by James Nesbitt, Principal, Service Delivery at Asset Performance Group, we call them APG every once in a while here, then you are absolutely in the right place. Before we start, we want to take a moment to ask you to remember to request your free subscription to Uptime Magazine. It's available online, free by request at uptimemagazine.com. And all you have to do is fill in a short little form under the subscribe tab, and it's all ready for you then. And without any further ado, I am handing James the presentation. James, did we get you there?
Terry.
All right. My pleasure.
Okay, I'm going to show my screen. You just tell me what you're seeing. Are you seeing the presentation on my screen now?
I am. I'm seeing like a pond with a couple buildings around it.
Primary sedimentation. Great. I got two screens. I wasn't sure which one it was going to come up on.
You hit the right one. It's your lucky day today. Well, welcome, and thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge and experience with us.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Terry. Applying PAS-55 principles, the water wastewater case study. So today we're going to take a look at some of the work that we've done in the water wastewater industry and talk about how we use PAS-55 as the roadmap for completing our, in this case, reliability improvement initiative. I believe there's going to be questions afterwards, so you can type in your questions for Terry, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So who is APG? Terry introduced APG. We are a maintenance excellence company that was founded in 2003. We have offices in Hamilton, Calgary, and Vancouver, and resources throughout North America. As part of the Aladon network, we have a global reach with network members for resources that can support us throughout the world. We also have partnerships with EMA and Ivara Corporation and are a member of the SMRP organization and the Institute of Asset Management. Now, the Institute of Asset Management is the one that developed the PAS-55 specification. PAS-55 is a specification. It is not a standard, even though sometimes the word standard rolls off my tongue. It is not a British standard. It is a specification. The specification was developed by the IAM and is administered by the British Standards Institute. When we look at the PAS-55 standard, see, I did it again, specification, what we need to remember is that it tells us what to do, not how to do it. And throughout this presentation, you'll see I've got little footnotes or little text boxes that quote the PAS-55 specification. And you can see the level of detail that's there as we go through, and we'll show you how we apply those elements to this municipality. We have here is the PAS-55 overview. It talks about the organizational strategic plan at the top and then rolls down through the elements of PAS-55. PAS-55 aligns to your organizational strategic plan and encompasses the asset management elements below that. So PAS-55 is a top-down approach to asset management and starts with an understanding of the organization's goals. What is it you want to do? And determining the best maintenance strategy from there. Although at the surface this may seem fairly intuitive, shouldn't the goal of most organizations to be the lowest cost producer or 100% reliability in their equipment? On the surface that sounds like it makes sense, but variables such as current market conditions, cash flow, redundancy, permitting in water, wastewater, all have an effect on what the best strategy is for your operation and maintenance program or your asset management program. From the objectives, PAS-55 guides us through the asset management policies, strategies, objectives, and plans. The methodology is comprehensive and includes the technologies, controls, implementation, and performance assessment frameworks. As we'll see in this presentation, PAS-55 is an excellent framework to guide your asset management and reliability effort. One does not have to commit to becoming PAS-55 certified. We coach our customers to not try to boil the ocean. but to align what their initiatives to PAS-55. That way, PAS-55 certification becomes an event in your journey rather than the focus of an improvement or PAS-55 project. It's something that occurs rather than something that is the ultimate goal of a project. Municipality, we're going to look at leverage some aspects of PAS-55, but not all of them. The PAS-55 was the framework and an excellent roadmap that helped them navigate the requirements for effective improvement, but they didn't begin by seeking a PAS-55 solution. They didn't say, let's go out and become PAS-55 certified or implement PAS-55. They had some clear objectives, some clear goals, and PAS-55 was a framework that we used to guide us on that journey or to set up the project. Based on their specific goals, the application of the elements was really done in 2 stages. And we'll talk about those 2 stages as we go through here. First, it was the development of the asset policy, the strategy, and the plans. This allowed the organization to lay out all of the requirements associated with their goals and effectively plan the approach. The second stage was the doing of the work, based on what it is that they were trying to do, what was going to bring immediate benefit or satisfy an immediate need for them. This focus was on improved reliability and equipment understanding. So we put together an action plan that really focused in those areas. Now remember that PAS-55 is not exclusively an asset reliability process. As a matter of fact, asset reliability in the traditional definition of RCM or maintenance strategy is an integral but small piece of the overall specification. To date, there are some aspects that have not fully realized. The implementation of the results is planned, however, not fully executed. The communication plan and change management aspects of the project are being performed, and there are some significant gains there already. Some of those gains are improved understanding in the equipment, improved communication, and understanding throughout the organization at all levels that have been involved of what's in it for me. What does this mean to me? What does this mean to my job when I participate in this? What is the impact to me at the end of the day, and what am I committing to? It also helped the organization understand equipment failure with a common definition. So getting operations and maintenance into a room so they could understand what really responsible stewardship of the assets was that included all of the stakeholders, engineering, operations, maintenance, senior management, the customer. And you can see at the bottom here we have something called a management review, performance assessment and improvements. I call this really the continuous improvement loop, ensuring that we have buy-off and support and budget for what we're trying to do, and looking for opportunities to continuously improve. Again, that is something that is planned to be done in this implementation, but not something that they've gotten to yet. Right now, we're just finishing up the first stage of identifying the correct strategy. So the organization, it's a medium to large water utility in Canada. It operates and maintains both water and wastewater facilities and services a community of over 1.5 million people. And as I've stated, it was not looking for a PAS-55 solution. Rather, it had a set of goals that it was trying to achieve. So before beginning the project, the organization had clear goals established for what they were trying to achieve. Better understanding of the equipment. So you can see here that the aging workforce was a huge issue for them. This, coupled with a relatively low understanding of the equipment, its capacity, or its required performance standards. There were few formal training programs. Directed at the equipment itself. Most maintenance and operational training was really focused at the CMMS level, with some vendor-specific training done at an infrequent basis. Regulatory compliance in the organization was very reactive, and the managers scrambling to ensure that they had proper controls in place to address any new regulations. There was little proactive effort to addressing regulations before they became a requirement. And this also caused some some issues with permitting in the organization. Sustaining the effort, maintaining a viable workforce is challenging given the higher requirement for skilled workers resulting from changing or increasing regulations. So as the regulations increased, higher levels of skills were required. Couple that with, at the time, low unemployment levels made keeping employees while remaining tied to municipal pay structures very difficult. This really compounded the problems with the aging workforce. On one side, we had people with 25, 30 years worth of experience that were looking at moving on. And then the new generation or the younger workers coming in, very, very difficult to retain them. Environmental impacts. They had experienced some high-profile spills of untreated sewage. And although there is redundancy built into nearly every process, they are still experiencing premature failures on redundant equipment, or worse, redundant equipment that would not work when it was called upon. Now, these instances did not lead to a breach of environmental regulation or safety incident, but left without attention. It was really just a matter of time as to when they would. Maintenance cost. Water and wastewater facilities are often the cash cows in municipalities. This is no secret. And this was no exception at this municipality. However, they were subject to cutting costs and had to provide justification for dollars spent. Complicating this was the threat of outsourcing of the operations and maintenance to a third party who claimed that they could produce greater reliability at a lower overall cost while maintaining the product quality or the treatment quality of the water, both drinking and waste. The municipality needed to form a basis for the work that needed to be done to ensure that they were doing the right work, and all of the departments in the organization were focused on value-added work. So, using PAS-55 as a roadmap, first step, establish the policy. How are we going to maintain our assets, and what is it that we're looking for? Develop a strategy to realize that policy, and then implement that with plans. The asset management policy at this municipality. Although this seems an easy extension from the corporate goals, the development of the management policy was an intense process. Having to overcome personal agendas, pet projects, and most of all, emotion, the development of the policy took place over several weeks, included senior representation from each of the areas or plants that would be affected by the project, and in the end, we identified four focus areas. Regulatory compliance, being proactive in the stewardship of safety and the environment. Facility upgrading and capital, understanding the capacity of the equipment and opportunities for capital investment to address failing infrastructure and increased demand. There really was a low level of understanding of the equipment subsystems, and some of the ancillary support or safety systems that were part of the overall function of the equipment. So the organization was really dependent on tribal knowledge and the senior people to keep the equipment running. Understanding the initial condition of the equipment as well as the risks that are posed to the organization in order to prioritize capital improvement projects. So they knew that we would need some capital money to both improve the equipment to keep up with the best available technology, but that needed to be prioritized, and an understanding of the regulations that were coming were a huge part of how we would prioritize those opportunities for capital investment. Sustainable workforce, less reliance on tribal knowledge and more formalized reference for the operation and maintenance of the equipment, including operational theory and maintenance strategy basis. Why are we doing this? How should we operate the equipment? What are the parameters associated with it? And of course, value for money, ensuring that all the processes were value added, striving to eliminate low and no value work, and implementing and leveraging technologies such as vibration, thermography, and non-destructive testing were applicable. The effort was not affected on the lowest cost. It was focused on the lowest overall unit cost over the entire life of the asset. So we weren't looking at just slashing the cost of operating and maintaining the equipment. We were looking at a long-term strategy for the lowest overall unit cost with high levels of both quality and performance. So our strategy is unlike many asset management projects, the focus was not primarily on capital expansion or reliability block modeling and simulation to determine a new configuration or opportunities for redesigning the system. Rather, it was focused on applying the best available practices on the existing assets, understanding what their capabilities were, understanding where we weren't operating them to the optimal degree, and include a concentrated effort to involve as many representatives from the plants in order to increase the overall awareness and understanding of the equipment. So the organization recognized very, very early that success, especially around change management and communication, was dependent on including as many people as they could in the overall initiative. So at every plant that we visited, at every plant that we implemented or analyzed at, we tried to include as many of the trades, operators, engineering, stakeholders in the equipment as we could. The goal was to understand the capacity and safe operating standards of the equipment in place, its current operating configuration. So the plan, how do we realize the strategy? The plan to achieve the strategy was based around the PAS-55 life cycle activity elements. Acquire and creation and acquisition. This was clearly not a focus of the initiative, as we were given a mandate to understand the equipment in its current operating context. And although some redesigns were recommended, they were only done if the equipment did not have the capacity to perform at the level they required, or the lack of control that would result in environmental safety or organizational impact. So we're really taking a look at their existing asset base and say, how can we best manage this and identify areas or opportunities to improve going down the road. Utilization of assets. This was the key focus, starting at equipment criticality to understand the impacts of equipment failure and ensure that we focused on equipment that mattered the most. We were not going to look at every component, but focused on the top percentage that represented the greatest share of the risk. And here it was about 20% of the asset systems that we ended up looking at. Maintenance of the assets, using a combined RCM2 and maintenance task analysis approach. And maintenance task analysis is a less rigorous application of RCM2. We brought all the stakeholders of the equipment together to discuss the operation, maintenance, and requirements for the equipment. Standard operating procedures and maintenance plans were key to the structured documentation required for sustainment, as well as the understanding of the level of performance required in the equipment. Utilization of assets. Standard operating procedures and maintenance procedures were clearly a key deliverable. So how do we go about doing it? Well, 4 steps. First one, identifying and performing criticality. Where are my critical assets and which one should we focus on? Identifying the operating context, understanding how that system fit into the overall organization and understanding how it contributed to the organization's goals. As part of the criticality analysis, we also looked at level of knowledge within the organization. Do we have a base or a benchmark level of knowledge that's going to allow us to be successful? We performed the analysis and did a management review. So we brought the stakeholders into the room and then at the end made sure that everybody was on board and would support it. Addressed redesign issues, both procedural and physical. And then, of course, documentation and implementation. Documentation being key really to the sustainment of the effort and a disciplined and structured approach to the configuration, maintenance, and operation of the equipment. Criticality. We began with criticality. In criticality, you look at all of the assets across the target systems. It was performed against the system and subsystem level and looked at 6 common criteria. And they're listed here: safety, environment, product quality, output, customer service, and operating costs. Now, these criteria were applied to all of the assets across all of the businesses evenly. So the same criteria with the same weighting was used in water, wastewater, as was used in the water plants, as was used in the pumping stations. The results of this were the top systems to focus on. As I mentioned, that was about 20% of the entire asset base. Next step was understanding the equipment, a detailed operating context. Now, it's not an operating context in the normal definition of operating context as you would expect from an RCM2 or an FMEA analysis. It went to a lot more detail. So we looked at an overview of the process. What is it intended to do? What are the ancillary safety and support systems associated to the process that we're trying to protect? Primary functions and performance standards. What do we need it to do, and to what level do we need it to do it at? Theory of operations, operating parameters, major components, subsystem process flow details, general consequences of failure. So we had a real start on understanding what it was we were trying to preserve, but also understanding how we needed to operate it and what parameters we needed to stay within. What constituted a failure, what constituted really loss of control of the operation. The analysis. So the analysis exercises where the detailed discussion and documentation began. Facilitated by an experienced practitioner, these sessions brought all of the stakeholders into the room. And as I've said before, this was key to the communication and change management of the new process into each of the plants and areas that it was being implemented into or will be implemented into. By having people participate and provide input, it is an impotence for them to watch the process go through and then understand what the expectations are in the other end, when it's implemented on the other side. What's in it for me, and how is this going to impact my day-to-day work? Recommendations. So all of the recommendations were reviewed by the stakeholders. We went through all of the redesign recommendations, the maintenance strategy recommendations, the operational recommendations, and the senior management understood what was being recommended, but also understood how that was going to affect the budgeting and resourcing at the municipality. So at the end of the day, we had a common understanding of what it was we were going to do and how we were going to support it. The redesign process. Now, the redesign process really fell into two categories. First one being procedural, standing operating and maintenance procedures, SOPs and maintenance plans. Now, these were a key focus of the initiative from the beginning, so there was a process in place to do these. Once they went through the management review, they were done internally. There was no approval requirement required other than the management review. So when they came out of there, they were just built to the required standard, and then implemented both in their document management system and as part of the practices document that we'll see next. Engineering. So any engineering redesigns that were identified were assessed from cost, effort, and risk. If there was a safety or environmental impact, well, those were done right away because we couldn't accept that consequence. But some of the other ones were related to perhaps increased redundancy, better reliability, better configuration, where those were assigned to either internal or external resources to implement. They were prioritized and budgeted, and then put into the capital expenditure plan. So they may have been done in the current fiscal year, or they may have been deferred based on risk and cost. Documentation. Now this is really where the rubber hit the road. So for every critical system that was done, the organization now had a user's guide, if you will, that was specific to their equipment and their operating context, and included all of the operational parameters, the capability, how it was configured, what options there were for configurations, what the basis was for the maintenance strategy, why are we doing this work, and the risks associated to the operation of the asset system. So really a one-stop shop to go to understand everything there was to know about that asset system. So where are they now? The review of the analysis of the identified systems is completed. So we've looked at the top 20% of the asset systems, and we've reviewed We've reviewed them all. Practices manuals are now being used as reference training aids and troubleshooting guides. So now the training isn't just focused on pure CMMS or process steps. It's focused on what it is we're trying to get out of this equipment with an understanding of all of the stakeholders' requirements as well. Regulatory requirements are understood and prioritized. And we're starting to get ahead of the curve a little bit, so we're looking forward as to what's going to happen rather than reacting to what has happened. We've developed a comprehensive, defendable, lowest cost approach to asset maintenance and operation. The organization is still not pursuing PAS-55 certification at this time. Now, however, it is the roadmap. So that's the real power of the PAS-55 specification, is that you don't have to jump in and eat the elephant all in one bite. You can determine what it is you're doing and fit it into the framework. The framework will tell you what supporting enablers that you need, what controls, and to some extent what you need to measure. Implementation of the maintenance program is still to occur, but significant benefit has already been achieved. And that significant benefit really is in people understanding what the equipment is supposed to do. It's no longer I move these buttons or replace this pump or regulate the flow in this way. It's understanding what the intent of the function is and everybody working together to preserve that. And that brings us to the Q&A session. So the upcoming webinars that we have, we'll get into at the end of this. But Terry, if I could hand it over to you.
Excellent, James. Very, very good information. I am going to do a couple of things before we start the Q&A. I wanted to ask the audience so we can get an idea, because PAS-55, although, as you may have mentioned, although it was created several years ago, we're wondering how aware people are of PAS-55. So we're going to ask the people on this call if they wouldn't mind just giving us an indication. James, you can't see it, but I'm launching a poll over your PowerPoint right now. I'm asking, are you already aware of PAS-55 so we can get an idea? I think that'll be useful, being that you and I are doing a lot of PAS-55 conversation this year. And we'll give it about 5 more seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and close that. James, on this call, and possibly it's because they're all APG fans and reliability web readers, we have 79% saying yes, that they're aware of PAS-55, 21% saying no, that they're not aware of it. And let me see if I can find my other poll. We'll put that away. And I'm going to try the second one. And this one surprised us in the past, James, so let's see if it surprises us again. Does your organization have a written asset management policy? Forget PAS-55 for a moment. Just tell us if you have, if we came in, could you show us your written asset management policy? We were coming in to visit your plant. And so just take a moment and indicate whether you do have a written asset management policy or you do not have a written asset management policy. We're going to give this about 5 more seconds so we can get to the Q&A. And by the way, as James said, if you do have questions, we have some time. You can enter them through the question pane on your webinar control panel. All right. And all right, James, on this one, probably a little more as we expected. 31% have a written asset management policy. 69% do not have a written asset management policy.
Yeah, that's that's still a little bit higher than I would have guessed, Terry.
Well, you do
have a lot of keyers on the line.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I guess before we go to the question specifically about PAS-55, do you think that is one of the things that the PAS-55 specification brings to the table, is it forces you to do some policy definition? Forget the value of every element of the framework of it for a moment, or the value of it as an asset management specification. How about just the very fact that it forces you to examine your policy on asset management? Is there some value in that?
Well, I think there's huge value in that, and I think that you're right. Coupled with PAS-55 has been around for many years now. The last revision was the 2008 PAS-55 guideline. So it's been around a little while, but it's just starting to get some traction in North America. So I would have said a year ago, some people had heard about it, but really couldn't explain it. Now as we're talking to people, they've read the specification, they're wondering how it fits into their organization, and they're starting to think about some of the strategic components of it, developing the policy, developing the strategy, objectives, and plans, and starting to think about how they're going to formulate those in the future. So I think as we start to move forward and talking to organizations, just the fact that the specification is out there and people are thinking about it, we're going to start seeing higher results on these polls that you're having, or being able to see an asset management policy directed to their asset portfolio when we go and talk to an organization. Just because it's bringing awareness to it, Gary.
Well, one of the participants here is saying, listen, James, we already have standards for dependability, maintainability, RCM, and many of the other activities you mentioned, and EAM helps us to stay focused on that. So why do we need PAS-55?
And that's a really good question. As I said in the beginning, what PAS-55 doesn't do is tell you how. It simply tells you what you need to do and gives you a framework for moving down that road. So things like RCM, so things like Lean Six Sigma, and a host of other reliability and maintenance best practices. Those standards are still required, and they're not part of the PAS-55 standard. PAS-55 doesn't tell you how, but you can take all of those and start to put them into the framework so that you're working together, so that you're all going in the same direction. So often in the past, we have seen initiatives come and go, and they become your flavor of the month. So we're going to do RCM. We jump in, we do RCM for a couple of years, we put the binders on the shelf, and then we move off to the next big initiative. Maybe it's Lean Six Sigma, maybe it's statistical analysis of failure. But there's no framework to bring all of that together, and that's really where PAS-55 is going to leverage a lot of value.
How important is the IT or the software around this overall solution? Is there, can I go to APG and say, let me have your PAS-55 software? What role does software play in this?
Well, as far as PAS-55 software, there really isn't any. There are some tools that are available that are going to help you with the assessment piece, so that you can assess yourself against the PAS-55 standard. But the technologies and the software solutions around PAS-55 are not part of the specification, are not endorsed yet by IAM or the British Standards Institute. However, that being said, technology has a huge role in this, and it really is to support the initiative. So if we're doing something like RCM, we need something that's going to allow us to implement and sustain the process. So how do I take my RCM program, get it onto the shop floor, and put it into a continuous improvement loop? Depending on the size of your organization, the functionality within your CMMS, you're going to need to find some way to manage that. And software and technology help you do that. Other technologies you may need are PDM type equipment, vibration, thermography, non-destructive testing,
ultrasound, motor testing,
analysis,
right?
Ultrasound,
right.
Yeah. You may want to do some investments in that in order to support your PAS-55 or your, in this case, reliability improvement project.
Well, it's kind of that's a great segue to actually the next question. How do you link what looks like a physical asset approach to that of RCM that uses a functional approach?
How do I link a physical asset approach to a functional approach?
So is there
what we did here?
Yeah, are they two different perspectives? Are they the same? Are they just are they complementary? How do they layer together?
Well, when we're looking at a physical asset approach, we're really looking at things, asset configurations. I mean, we want to do some asset reliability block modeling. We may want to look at capital improvement plan. Where can I improve my assets? So that is part of a big part of the PAS-55 framework, but also the how am I going to maintain what I have now. A big part of PAS-55, as you saw in the presentation, were the 4 elements: create, maintain, operate, disposal of my asset portfolio. So the full life cycle costs associated to my assets after they've been acquired or created.
We had a question about where they can acquire PAS-55, so I sent everybody a little chat that it's at the IAM, THEIAM.org. You buy in UK pounds and they mail it to you. In America or Canada, if you prefer to deal in dollars, you can get them at books.mro-zone.com. They are definitely worthwhile documents to get a hold of. As James said, if I could just throw my 2 cents in for a second, the water utility that he gave the case study from is not currently pursuing PAS-55 certification, but what they found value in was the framework, the asset management framework. So it leads us into another question we've got from one of our participants, James. Why go for certification? What are the advantages of certification for an organization?
Well, I think the journey towards certification is where you're going to see the benefits. So starting to, of course, apply the framework and the methodologies and the tools and the enablers and the controls around that are really where the benefit is. PAS-55 shows you the roadmap for how to get there. And in our opinion, the certification of PAS-55 will become an event in your journey. At some point, you'll have reached critical mass, and you can get PAS-55. Now, PAS-55 certification in North America, to my knowledge, is not a requirement for any organization like ISO may be in steel manufacturing or in discrete manufacturing as a whole. PAS-55 is still optional, and there are no requirements to do it. But if we're going to use the framework to move forward, it's a wonderful roadmap to ensure that everything is aligned. And at some point, like I say, you're going to reach critical mass, and certification will be an event that you may want to get.
If I
may want to acquire. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if I could add just a little more context to that also. In the UK, it's you correct me if I'm wording this wrong, James. It's strongly recommended by the utility regulator, and I think that's the key word: strongly recommended by the regulator that you become PAS-55 certified. So it's a little bit if you want to use the term, ahead of North America in that regard, and a lot of it has to do with the regulator's desire and public statements, basically letting utilities know they wouldn't look kindly on a utility that wasn't moving towards the certification of the framework. And you can fill in the blanks as to all the reasons why that might be. I do believe something is going to be coming to North America. It is going to become it is fast tracking towards an ISO standard. So I think it's a great idea to at least have this on your radar screen and looking at it. And like James says, there's certification, but then there's the value of actually pursuing your journey. And that's where you're going to get the most practical, pragmatic business value from the journey, not from the certification. But the certification is kind of the icing. And if you are in a regulated industry, I would say it ain't going to hurt. Who does?
I would agree, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. That the ISO standard is coming, and as is typical with most ISO standards, those become requirements. And it is the IAM is working with ISO to take all of the elements or components of the PAS-55 specification and align them and develop the ISO specification. So they're integral to that process as well.
Personally, I'm very excited about the standard. Again, probably from where we started this conversation, James, is in the fact that for the first time there's a universal written policy, and so whether that we could you and I, I'm sure, and the audience could go around and around all day long as to the perfection of the framework, which obviously it has a ways to go. But the fact that it's a starting point with a written specification. But now I'm getting in the way of all the questions here. What real quickly a follow up there? Who does PAS-55 certification?
Well, right now there are no guidelines today around who can do certification. So APG has applied with I'm assuming a number of others into what the IAM is calling the Endorsed Assessor Scheme. In the UK they like to call things scheme, which that kind of has a negative connotation here in North America, but the Endorsed Assessor Scheme is expected to announce those candidate companies that are recommended by the IAM and show due diligence in their assessment process going forward. So we should see that in July.
Let me ask here. Is the asset program, PAS-55, integrated and part of plant procedures?
I see it kind of the other way around. I see PAS-55 as the framework for asset management around operations, maintenance, engineering, and procedures and SOPs are a component of it.
Is the asset program interface with PM program goals and objectives?
Well, yes. So as I tried to show here is if we look at policy, strategy, and then plans for achieving those goals. In the municipality that we looked at, one of the goals was the lowest cost maintenance and operations strategy, and a basis for all of the work that they were doing. So you can see by taking those goals and then filtering it down to a strategy and a plan for accomplishing them, that those become fully aligned to the asset management strategy.
I'm afraid I may have thrown people off the track here that I didn't intend to do. No, PAS-55 is not only for regulated industries. My point and the reason why I said that, it's for all types of industries. Anybody who wants to improve the life cycle investment that they've made into their assets. It's a framework, in theory, to drive whatever performance or whatever return you want from your assets. The reason I mentioned it in terms of regulation is that regulators tend to like written programs that are outside of the actual company being regulated. In other words, that they came from a third party. They tend to look favorably on them, and that's the only reason I brought it up in that context. Go ahead, James.
I was going to say that no, that's correct. That it's meant for industry as a whole, but given that and your example, when we go into oil and gas and water, wastewater, and electrical generation, that's where we see right now the most maturity in North America.
James, can they come to apgassetcare.com where you're showing on the screen here? Can they get an assessment from you right now?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
good.
So
good.
we have applied for the Endorsed Assessor certification. Like I said, that's going to be announced in July. We have a very comprehensive assessment process. It's really based on the PAM specification put out by IAM, and we see of course no roadblocks to us becoming certified. So we of course would be willing to talk about that, and the timing is perfect given the certification in July.
The a couple questions specifically about the case study that you brought up. There's two, and I'm going to try to combine them into one. One's asking what were the financial benefits of the municipality to date, or were there intangible benefits only, or both? And then the second question that's related to that is what administrative, technical, or organizational changes occurred as a result of this journey that they're making?
Okay. From a financial perspective, there were no benefits tracked or reported. Now, when we look at the work that's done, the focus was on the lowest cost maintenance and operations strategy. And by moving to a largely time-based, largely recommended maintenance program, we have reduced the overall cost of doing the maintenance program. Has that resulted in the reduction of FTEs? No, it hasn't to date. And that's not something that they're looking for. They were really looking for an increased understanding, an increased responsible stewardship of those assets. What was the second question?
So were there administrative changes? Were there management changes? In other words, were there systemic changes beyond the actions that they were taking around maintenance and reliability? You know, were there other organizational changes that took place that were required, that became apparent, were needed as you were instituting more asset policy?
So the need for those organizational changes is recognized. Right now, the project is still moving forward. So we have a project team that is really taking up all of the tasks associated to maintaining, implementing, and continuously improving this process. As the project comes to a close, we're going to need to make sure that those responsibilities are transferred into the organization. So things like reliability engineering, whether it be at the corporate or the plant level, how to structure that and the tasks associated to that are things that we're starting to look at now so that when we transition out, it's sustainable.
James,
did that answer the question?
Yep, that was great. This participant saying, look, we already have an enterprise asset management system. We have asset registers, GIS systems, work management. We got maintenance history. We're gathering materials, control, and cost reporting. So he's listening to all this, and he says, how will this British system assist me with my reliability program? Can you clarify?
Well, remember again that the British system, the specification isn't the how, it's the framework, and it doesn't really. It doesn't say that thou must have a CMMS and it must be SAP and you must have your work plans in this way. What it really is a framework for understanding how to manage all of the assets in your organization. So it's not just a maintenance system. It's not related just to your CMMS. It's related across the organization, from senior management, operations, engineering, maintenance, human resources. It is cross-functional across those organizations and helps you understand what it is you want to get out of your equipment, out of your assets, and plan for that in the future. Do I need capital investment? Is my PM program adequate? Is there opportunity there to increase it? Do I have the right level of knowledge around my equipment? Do I have the right tools in place to support it? Right? So it's not specific to technology or any one process.
And I'm going to, again, amplify on that particular point. The other two things, I agree completely with James, and the other two things I think it does in addition to that is it provides a transparent decision-making process related to your asset decisions that align.
That's very good.
That align the C-suite, the people who are deploying the capital to deploy those assets. They have certain ideas and certain decision criteria. It aligns, it forces the alignment of the people closest to the assets that are obviously making decisions that often in today's context are disconnected from the asset decisions that the people who deployed the capital for those assets are desiring. This makes that connection. So it's not specifically a reliability support tool. It's an asset support tool more so. Would you agree with that, James?
Yeah, you can't see me, but I'm nodding my head in violent agreement, right? It removes the silos in the organization so that everybody has a big picture view of what we're trying to accomplish and how they're going to contribute to that.
Excellent. If somebody's company's already ISO 9001 and what we're saying becomes reality, that PAS-55 does move to some sort of ISO related asset management standard, is it redundant?
Well, you know, at this point, Terry, I'm not sure I'm in a position to answer that fairly. I really don't know the full scope of what the ISO spec for asset management will be, and the overlaps between ISO 9001. I would expect that it wouldn't be. I would expect that the ISO standard for asset management would be very similar to what the PAS-55 specification is,
Mm-hmm.
and include requirements for process measurement and repeatability, much like 9001 does, but specific more to asset management than overall organizational management. But that's just my opinion. It's not based on fact.
I'm far from an ISO 9001 expert myself. I heard a story of one of the first companies who got ISO 9001 certified, and that the actual reason they were able to fast track their certification is because they only had 100 documents. They only had 100 processes. So you can get ISO 9001 certification and not have a policy that relates to your asset management. So I think what the point then should be here to amplify that question is to say that although it's quite possible that what comes out of ISO in terms of an asset management standard might borrow or reference or lend itself to ISO 9001, the advantage is this will be a written policy that, if it follows the intent of PAS-55, will do all the things that James has been saying today, but plus be a specific policy that is related to your asset management. So 9001 has no requirement to deal with the assets and the management of your assets, and where this, if it retains the flavor of PAS-55, will. Did you? I'm not aware of this because I'm not a nuclear expert here, but there's somebody online who is, that's saying that nuclear plants use what's called AP913 for their asset management instead of PAS-55. So in that industry, it appears that there is already some sort of standard.
Yeah, so AP913 for asset management in the nuclear industry, I haven't heard of that changing at all. Or AP928, the work management strategy for nuclear. I haven't heard of any of that being affected by the PAS-55 standard. But you know, a lot of that has been around for many years and has a huge control organization around it, as you would imagine for a nuclear power plant. So change, especially change in a nuclear power plant, change in an organization that has huge consequences if it doesn't operate correctly, is usually very, very slow to occur. So I wouldn't expect that a nuclear AP913 or 928 is going to change in the near future.
You got people.
But again, that's my speculation, right?
Yeah, I would agree. They tend to be in their own world. You've really got people inspired here, James. We've got one participant whose focus is naval fleet maintenance, and they're currently using the processes of RCM and Lean Six Sigma to assist in that Navy fleet maintenance. Can PAS-55 further aid them? And if so, can you just explain how a little bit?
Well, I think yes, it can aid them. So what we've found is that in every implementation or every customer interface that we have now, PAS-55 is an integral part of it, even if that integral part is only on our side, to help us understand how we can add benefit to that customer. If the customer is not interested in seeing the PAS-55 framework, we still use it as a framework for helping the customer to be successful. So in the naval, industry, much like we've said, it removes the silos across the organization. It helps us understand how things like Lean Six Sigma and RCM are going to affect not just our organization, but asset management as a whole, and allows us to really move ourselves up to the 30,000-foot level and see the organization, right? Or in this case, see where the ship is going. It helps us to steer from an asset management perspective where we're going.
The people are asking about the archiving of this, and so I'll address that immediately upon the ending of this live event, you will get an email with a link to the recorded event at the same place where you're watching it right now. Within a week or so, we will also archive it permanently over at the Reliability Web tutorial site, and we'll send out a new email about that. Some people have trouble streaming through this go-to system, so that's why we move it over eventually, is that we have a system that's firewall friendly. But so right away you'll be able to share it with your coworkers, and we very much encourage you to do so. We also encourage you to contact APG. We'll send you their contact information as well, but it's apgassetcare.com. If you do want to have conversations, they're mighty friendly, and they know a lot, and they're more than happy to take your call. A couple people did have to jump off, James, and they did tell us they were very, very appreciative of what you shared today, but we still have a couple more questions if you have a couple more minutes.
Certainly.
All right, great. Is there any method for insight or lessons learned from, like I guess in RCM, maybe is the context, there's a living program, but is there something as part of PAS-55 about lessons learned and insights to improve the asset management program on an ongoing basis?
Well, I think one of the key learning for us in any implementation, and now that we're using PAS-55 as a framework, is that communication is key. So as we start to move forward, we need to move out of the project, out of the department, out of the organizational silo, and make sure that everybody understands what's in it for them. So PAS-55 has taught us, one key learning from that is that everybody needs to be involved. That we can't just insulate an improvement in one part of the organization, whether it be operational or maintenance, but that we need to include everybody. And by getting these people included, by soliciting, listening, and implementing where applicable their input, that's the biggest catalyst for successful change.
James, who was the initiator at this municipality? Can you tell us where this drive for improvement came from?
It really came from the board. So that, as I mentioned, that there were some environmental spills, and there was some pressure for privatization of the operation and maintenance of the municipality, which is a huge concern to most privately run municipalities now. So they set out to say, okay, how do we ensure that we're doing the right work at the right time, and how do we ensure that we don't have another high-profile spill? So that was really the catalyst of it, and then it spilled down into really the maintenance organization, and it was the director of maintenance that was responsible for both the sponsorship of the program and the support throughout.
Excellent. Is that where it should start? Is that, or does it matter? I mean, is that the right answer, so to speak?
The right answer is above a single organization. So not the maintenance manager, not just the operations manager, not just the operations VP, but a combination of the organization moving towards this. So in this case, where it's the board saying, this is what we need to occur, and these are the results that we're looking for, we now have clear objectives as to where we want to move. And as you saw in the presentation, clear objectives are not a part of, the organizational objectives are not a part of PAS-55. That needs to be defined by the organizational body. And PAS-55 allows us to organize, to align to that. So in this case, yes, the board said this is what we need to do. There was clear objectives, clear measurements and goals of those objectives. And there was a senior person in the organization who was committed to communicating across the organization in order to ensure that we met the goals and objectives. So yes, this was the right place.
Excellent. Very, very good, James. I'm afraid that we're out of time. There may be one or two questions that we didn't get to that we're going to send to you in the spreadsheet if you guys would pay extra close attention to those and get back with these guys. Would very much appreciate it. I want to really take a moment to thank the audience. You guys were great participators today. We really, James and I both, very much enjoy it when we get that kind of audience engagement. That's why we do these web workshops. Would also like to thank the audience for sharing their information with us through the polls. Can't thank James Nesbitt and the folks at APG at Asset Performance Group. And again, remember to visit them at www.apgassetcare.com for sharing their knowledge and experience with us. James, has been a great couple of sessions. We're looking forward to the future ones. And this is Terry O'Hanlon at Reliability Web and Uptime Magazine signing off.